long-term, intergenerational vision and strategy for the community and for the larger area as they integrate within regional, larger regional scales. I have two very brief examples which are not in the guideline, so I thought I'd bring them out in discussions with Karen. We talked about some of these, but the guideline itself has a number of case studies. Some of them highlight the financial and incentive mechanisms there, so you can take a look at that. Community-based natural resource management, everybody's very familiar with that. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about the wildlife conservancies in Africa and their role in restoration, in connectivity, and in rehabilitation. Perhaps restoration is not the appropriate word, but rehabilitation, so that we bring back some of the biodiversity and some of the ecosystem services where we're not able to fully restore a historical reference system. In terms of minimizing costs, I think these conservancies have demonstrated over time that the use of local and traditional knowledge is critical, so that we're not having to develop new technologies. We're not having to bring in technologies from around the world, but the knowledge is already there for people and communities to sustainably manage their ecosystems. And the fact that we can integrate this type of sustainable resource management with the wider markets, non-local markets, is also an important aspect of these conservancies. And perhaps the most important is the direct participation of stakeholders and the clear arrangements, both financial and legal arrangements, that give them the understanding that these things will continue, that they're not on shaky ground in terms of the future, and that they will maintain some types of rights, whether they be land rights or whether they be rights to resource use. The conservancies started on the Zimbabwe model. It's called Campfire, and they've taken off in a number of countries, and there's a number of modifications and variations in terms of the conservancies. But Namibia has certainly proved that these conservancies can work. They provide a tremendous amount of oversight by the local communities, transparency in the process, which gives everybody comfort in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. It allows them to really focus on the ecosystem and on the long-term restoration process. Access to areas. Sometimes there's limited access because there's going to be an exclosure for grazing, so that we can create a corridor for wildlife. And other times there will be increased access in terms of sustainable harvests, and those lead to jobs. A lot of the jobs that are created in the conservancies are tourism related. A lot of the financial transfers are generated by tourism, hunting, as well as photography tourism, eco lodges, and all the other amenities that the tourism industry offers in these parts of the world, in Namibia, Kenya, and South Africa. So we have these conservancies in many cases. In the case of Namibia, it's in the Constitution that these conservancies can be organized, and that they have a certain amount of communal rights in terms of the resources that they're using. Okay, so quickly I will just go to Argentina. This is, if that one was considered a bottom-up approach, this is considered a top-down approach. In the late 90s, there was a law that came through, Sustainable Development Law, Sustainable Use, which was integrated with the agriculture and the forestry sectors. Unfortunately, the funding for this massive project, this connectivity project, has still not yet materialized, yet there's a number of NGOs that are working within this zone, which connects Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina, and they are doing work on a piecemeal basis in a mosaic restoration focus. So thank you very much for your time.
I think we'll move on, if that's okay, Sasha, because we want to spend most of our time to hear from folks in the room. Andre Sobek is here to share with us some of his thoughts on engagement.
Okay. Yes, I will tell you something about experiences gained from the projects that were undertaken on the ground. And they are all projects that were designed in Slovenia. Actually, I'd like to show how important stakeholders are in the process. Okay.
It's going to fall off again. There you go.
Okay.
I'm sure.
And to illustrate what level of engagement of stakeholders should be achieved in different phases. And at the end, I'd like to show you two examples with very practical implications of failure and successes when stakeholders were properly or not properly included. So on the right side, you have the methodological approach that can be seen in the Ecological Restoration Guidelines, a little simplified here. And on the left side here, you have 4 phases of different level of stakeholder involvement in the process of ecological restoration. So in so-called pre-phase, the most important thing is to identify and range stakeholders. So these are those who use and value the area, but also those who likely be affected by the process. And the most important part in this pre-phase is to develop the vision for the restoration jointly with these stakeholders, as you can see here. So first of all is the kind of questions about education, is it really necessary measure, evaluation, assessment, and then to develop a vision. Then it comes the phase which is called basic planning, where it's very important that communication and participation involve these efforts to understand potential pros and contras against the restoration project. So this is something like here. And here, all key stakeholders or players should be invited to participate in this planning process. And then it comes the detailed planning, which is surprisingly not so important to involve stakeholders for one only reason, and this is because they don't really understand the method, technical engineering method of restoration or technical solutions. So don't bother too much to involve them in this phase of planning. And then it comes implementation and management, and later also monitoring, evaluation, adjustment, and communication, of course, where again stakeholders should be deeply involved in this phase, not only in planning but also in the management activities. But again, here you have to distinguish between the information that is provided to different stakeholders, like decision makers, landowners, those others who are likely to be affected. This is what we learned from the methodology. And here I'll show you 2 case study examples. The first one is restoration of a wetland where motorway was constructed and crossing a protected area. So it was a compensation measure. Once it is a compensation measure, we realized that a good point is that usually funding is available because the investors are interested to do their own business and they are ready to pay for some technical or engineering solutions. But usually they are not interested or they are not very, let's say, cooperative with the stakeholders. And the results, I'll show you just two. In the first example, investors didn't cooperate or didn't consult the landowners when buying the land for restoration. And everything was already agreed for buying the land. And then at the very last meeting, the landowner said, but for what purpose are you buying this worthless land? And then the investor said, well, for restoration of the pond for frogs and fishes. And the business was almost not done, because the landowner said, what? For frogs? No, I'm not selling the land for frogs. So they should be early engaged. And the second experience that we have here is that if the stakeholders, and here I mean especially those who are likely to be affected, and perhaps they are not perceived as the key stakeholders, or those who are using the area like for recreation or whatever, can threaten the project by increasing vandalism, because people were not informed why are those ponds being dredged out or whatever, so they started to demolish what was already done. So this is just to show how important it is to involve the stakeholders. If that was a bad example, here is a good example where the restoration was driven by a group of interested stakeholders, and this is the Brackish Lagoon wetland restoration, the only Brackish Lagoon we have in Slovenia, where the campaign of involvement of stakeholders was done by an NGO, very interested to undertake the project, so they really launched a campaign. They developed vision jointly with the local population, which was in the beginning strictly opposing the project, but at the end now they are strictly for the project. It helped in the implementation, and it was really effective, and also locals are also engaged now in management, maintenance, monitoring, and promotion. So this was my 3 minutes. Go back.
Thanks, Andre. At this point, I think what we'd like to do, if these two presentations have given you a sense of some of the complexities and ways of approaching restoration that is at the same time effective, efficient, and engaging. And there's a lot involved in doing this. It's not always a simple process, as you can see, but there are certainly some good practices that we've been able to learn from and synthesize. But if we're going to implement these ideas more broadly, if we're going to implement the guidance that's been produced and that's been summarized very briefly here, what are we lacking? Are we lacking anything? Do we have any needs to address in our capacity to approach restoration in this way? So we're going to, the next phase of our discussion here today, we're going to run as a World Cafe. And Ian Walker from Parks Victoria has offered to walk us through this and to guide the process, which many of you are probably familiar with. We're going to organize ourselves into groups and move on through to really try to draw out from all of you here, who I'm sure have many great ideas, some ideas that we can use to move forward with developing or making recommendations to the IUCN for further development of capacity, development. So I'll turn it over to Ian now to guide us through this process and give us some ideas about how we can dig into our own thoughts and think about it.
Thank you, Karen. Can people hear me all right if I don't use the microphone? No, yes? Yeah. what we'd like to do is, I guess, first of all, make sure people understand that we do have ecological restoration guidelines and that they've been released. And there is a brochure here. So just make sure that everyone's got a brochure with them to start with, so they've got an understanding of the principles. So if you haven't got a brochure, just come and grab one of those, and I'll hand a couple around so that people have them. Just hand them around, they're just a single file. This part of the session is really to get people involved and engaged, so it actually fits with the principles of the ecological restoration guidelines. So what we're trying to do is actually engage you in the conversation going forward. What I'd like to do is establish 4 groups. So we'll have a group that will actually operate in the back corners, and then two groups in the front corner. So we'll just break into that in a second, once I've given you the general instructions about how World Cafes work. So what we're going to do is go into a World Cafe where you'll sit in your group, and I'll just use this group as the example. We'll ask a standard question, and I'll put the question up on the board in a minute, and the group will discuss that question and go, how do we respond to that question? What are the challenges, issues, opportunities around that question? Record that. Someone in the group will record it, and that person in the group will stay at this station all of the session. The other groups will do exactly the same, and the person will stay there. After about 10 minutes, the group will move in any order apart from the recorder, and that way build on the previous discussion. All right, so it's as if we're having a latte, a coffee, a beer, depending on where you have your cafe, and you're sitting having a chat with your friends, colleagues about a particular item, and then you're going to your next meeting with your next group of friends or colleagues or other people. Just take that knowledge with you. On that basis, if people have any questions on that before we try and get into it.
There's no beer or latte though.
No, sorry. Just pretend. I'll just thanks for nothing. Yeah. I'll just flick to the question. Which is really, how do we improve capacity to implement effective, efficient, engaging ecological restoration? So that's the question we're asking, and it doesn't matter how you tackle that question, what you come away with from that question. So thank you. As it's being organised here, just make yourselves into some nice discrete groups. A group here, a group at the back, another group at the back, and another group at the front. We'll hand out some paper or some butcher's paper and just have a conversation about the particular question. And the first round will take about 10-15 minutes. Quite happy.